Welcome back to Breaking Down Storage Tech. Today we're breaking down the Moony Miss V5 by Vinet Natural and Rapscallion and Moony, of course. So let's get straight into it. So what is a miss? Well, a miss is a multi-item sorter. So we've seen plenty of times on this channel basic filters like over there that sort one item at a time or one item per slice. This can have up to 54 different items and sort them out into this hopper right here. Now, I have covered this before on my channel, but I don't think I did this revolutionary piece of tech justice, and I want to get further into detail and explain it in much better quality. Now, this runs at full hopper speed when you're sorting one item type. So if you keep sorting one of the same type, it will run at hopper speed, but you do have to have a 40 game tick delay between item types. So like, for example, if I was just sorting a bunch of redstone, then that would be perfectly fine and I could sort that at a hopper speed. But if I would go to redstone to a redstone repeater, then I would have to wait 40 game ticks so the whole system can run as intended. And yeah, that's pretty much all the notions and stuff. So I'm going to get straight into it. So first, we're going to see what happens when we don't sort an item that's in this set. For reference, this is the set. So anything here that's not the snow blockers is what we're filtering. So you can put literally anything of 64 or 16 stackables. The system doesn't sort unstackables because you need a separate unstackable sorter for that, but it handles both 64 and 16 stackables. And you can have basically fill all of these up. All you have to do is put 2 of the item you want to sort into here. So what happens when you put any or one of the items that isn't in this set, we go down or put this in this chest and it'll get pulled into this hopper and into this hopper. When it's in this hopper, this is pre-filled, so that way it only takes one of the same item type at a time. And because this hopper is naturally locked, we have to actually look at what the system does. So there is a comparator taken in subtract mode, taking a readout from here. And what it is also taking a reading in from is this side, which is a redstone signal of 1, coming from this comparator, coming from this composter right here. So this means that, or naturally when this is normally not doing anything, this is at a signal strength of 1 because of the filter items. And so it doesn't activate and no redstone signal is activated. But when this actually gets an item, it will go to a signal strength of 2 because this hopper has been calibrated like that, which will give it power because 2 minus 1 is still 1, so it outputs power. So it'll power this redstone wire right here, as well as powering this rail, and we'll talk about why that's important in a second. Just know that it is powered. So because it powers this block, it powers the rail and the redstone dust right here. When it powers this dust right here, it powers this repeater and turns off this redstone torch. This torch goes up to here, which will unpower this line right here, which will temporarily unlock this line for the 2 game ticks it takes for this redstone torch to turn on. Because you see, it'll turn off, so this redstone wire will no longer be powering all of this. But what will happen is 2 game ticks later, this redstone torch will turn on. We use this so that way, if it is an item that we want to filter, the period that this hopper is on is only long enough for it to take 1 item out. Because we want to keep 1 in here to make sure like we don't lose everything and lose the memory we have in here, but we also want to take 1 out so we can compare it to the other stuff if it is the same item type. So basically the gap between this unpowering and this redstone torch realizing it doesn't have power anymore and can repower is the gap we use for this hopper to take an item out. Now what also happens is it powers this repeater right here. This repeater then powers this block as well as this redstone dust right here, and this redstone dust right here, because it powers this block. And if we go to the other side, we also see that the redstone dust that was also powering this also powers this redstone torch right here. So this turns off and turns off this redstone wire right here. Now, normally this would unpower this redstone or this powered rail right here, but this is getting power from this comparator when it has an item, so it does keep this redstone or powered rail on. Now, what also happens is that this redstone right here gets powered on, and this will turn off this redstone torch right here. By turning off this redstone torch, it will power or unpower this line right here, which will unlock these hoppers underneath it. Actually, no, sorry, just this hopper up top, and this is which will allow items to start flowing out from this hopper. Now, because we are only sorting, or right now we're just trying to sort an item that's not in this base, we only have 1 item that will be taken out right here. And so what happens when the first item gets taken out, this goes back to 0, and this will turn off all the signals and return everything on. And During that period is where we actually use this power rail right here, because basically during this interval that this comparator turns off, there will be a period where this redstone torch is still trying to turn on, where this redstone wire is off, so this is no longer getting any power, as well as this comparator being off, so it's not powering this line right here. This will cause an update to this observer right here, which will power this observer, powering these rails right here, which send signals to all of these observers right here. Now, what do all of these individual things do? Well, as we can see, we have a hopper right here, and this goes directly into this dropper right here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to send a signal to this observer to power this observer to lock this hopper. This is to stop it from going into our output, and this is where your output goes. So I can actually make this a bit better. Here we go. Here we go. There. So this is our output. This is where we want all our redstone in this case would be. Now, what happens when this line runs, it will power this hopper right here, so the item gets stuck in this dropper while the other signals get processed. Now, this observer right here will power this dropper and this dropper, so it'll shoot the item when it gets registered that the item's in this dropper. It will power and shoot the into this dropper, which will push it into this dropper right here. This is where this observer reading the rail line that comes from here, and this happens because of this observer watching this powers this rail, so it activates all of these. And so this will power this dropper and this dropper up top. So now we've shot it all the way into this dropper right here. And this is where this last signal comes from. So this observer watching this rail as well, when it gets powered, will power this rail line right here, which will power this entire rail line, which will update this observer to power this dropper. And it will try and power this dropper right here, but because we've filled this chest completely, as you can see right here, there's no space for it to go. It'll try and power it, but won't go anywhere. So it'll just get pulled into this hopper and be able to go into the next slice. Now, what we can do is actually see this in effect if we go tick rate 2, because this is quite a slow system. So we're going to put this repeater in. We're going to see this comparator, we power, we turn off all of that signal, and you see the little interval that allow any items to go in. You can see the redstone signals going there. And if I reset the signal here, you can see that our repeaters made it into the next slice. Now, one thing to note here is when this hopper does unlock, none of the items from this water chest right here can make its way down because it is a completely full hopper, because all of these are snow filters. And yeah, now what happens when we want to filter an item that's actually in the set or in this selection of items? Now, the same thing happens with it making its way down into here, except now the difference is we can actually pull an item from this chest right here. Because of the same comparator readout, there is a small interval where this hopper right here is unlocked, which will allow one of these redstone dust items to come into the same slot as this redstone dust. Now, this essentially allows the first item, because it'll get pulled out because of hopper delays, it will get pulled out and we'll have a slight delay between the item or the item from here, this redstone dust, in this hopper and the redstone dust coming down here. This allows the redstone dust item that we put into the system to travel down all the way into this dropper. And because the system has a delay in this comparator unpowering again, because there's still another item in the hopper, this allows the item to move down into this hopper because there's no signal sent to this rail powering this observer and all that stuff. So yeah, now what happens then is the second item, when it moves down, it basically undergoes the entire same process as we talked about earlier with the item that's not in the set, except the only difference is when we make it into this dropper right here, it can actually get shot into this chest right here because this chest has items for it to go. It can actually stack with this item. So running this down in super slow motion, I'm gonna put it here, and we see this will soon on fire. Yep, and we can see repowering, and we'll see this rail activate pretty soon. And we see this pulse right here. We can see it spread to the observers. And we can go back here, and we see one redstone dust has been sorted, and the chest is reset to here. Now, the reason that I think the system is really cool and is how precise the system is, because it runs at hopper speed. So it basically allows it to run through all of this at hopper speed at 8 game ticks, because it uses the precise delays of the redstone torches to only send a signal when this signal runs out. So that way it sends a signal to run this entire thing. So we're not wasting any time double firing any observers or anything like that. And it's super precise. Now we can do that once again, and I can put this in here and we can see one item gets taken out and put back. And that is pretty much the whole system. This is a system that's also incredibly easy to hopper lock, but this is not the reason I love this system so much and I praise this system so much. It's the fact that, as you might notice, if I destroy this actually and put a chest, you might notice, hey, this is a 2-wide tileable system. How am I going to run all my stuff? It's going to be a pretty ugly hole, because as we all know, it's way more efficient to stack chests like this than to have them like this. And most multi-item sorter halls have this problem. You have to compromise between sorting a lot of items, but then you have to deal with that it's 2-wide tileable. And I just think these halls look really ugly, especially if you get some of those like zigzag designs. I really dislike those halls. But this is where I think this hall is super cool. Basically, if I just use a builder tool right here, if I select this, and this is a really bad selection, this is taking me way too long, but here we go. So if I make this selection right here, and then I flip it this way, I pull it all the way here, and then I flip it this way, as you can see right here, it tiles almost perfectly. And if you were to get rid of this chest right here, you can stack it like that even more closely. And that, I think, is just one of the best things. Now, I haven't done the best job here, but if I open my schematic right here and I take my torch or my stick, print it right here, you can see that it tiles super cleanly. You can have all of this like this, you can have all your set as whatever. In this case we have hoppers, but it doesn't really matter. And you can run out all the outputs. You see, you have to do a little bit of hopper finagling, but most of the case is you have two separate input, and you can see the filters are broken because I just loaded in the system. And that's one problem you should always, this is just general reference, if you're ever pasting in any storage tech and stuff, look to see if there's any filters or what the output is, because a lot of the time while the system's booting up and this comparator needs to take a readout, it will wipe most filters completely clean. So know what the system is supposed to look like beforehand, so you can just double check everything and always test, obviously. But as you can see right here, you have two different slices and it becomes 1-wide tileable, or 1-wide AB tileable, and you can just run this into infinity and it looks pretty cool. And yeah, so overall, one of the coolest systems. And yeah, thank you for watching.